Today we're talking about finding healing after trauma and how God meets us in broken places. And if you ever walk through a season where your faith felt tested or God felt silent, this conversation may speak to your heart. So LaFon Jantz again is here with us. She's a woman who has walked through deep loss and discovered the tender nearness of Jesus. This conversation is going to be about her trauma. LaFon, thank you for joining me.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Nancy.
Thank you. And let's talk about your story and what happened to you.
Well, just 6 months ago, my beloved, wonderful husband went to heaven instantly, suddenly. He was in a terrible auto accident where his car flipped over on him. He was killed instantly. There was nothing any of us could do. I tried my best to get that car off him, but there was no moving anything. So in an instant, my life was shifted, as if someone had taken this bucket filled with 43 years of goodness and highs and lows and all of the work that we had done together in building our business and practice together in our lives together with two wonderful sons and a daughter-in-law, and dumped it over in a second. So here I was, faced with sudden realization that all the things that he had taken care of and handled so beautifully would now be my responsibility, which includes our treatment center, a place of hope with 50 staff, all of his books that he's written, and the media interviews that were scheduled for him. Our two sons are adult sons. They're still quite young, but bringing them along, and our daughter-in-law, and several businesses, and just all of that, all of a sudden became my complete and total responsibility. Not to mention having lost the love of my life of 43 years, just instantly graduated to heaven, and I got left behind. So, it was just overwhelming trauma, is what I would say.
That must have been over the top, unbelievable, almost like surreal, right?
Surreal. Like I was watching a really crazy movie.
And
But
and
except it was my life.
I'm like, I can't believe that he's gone 6 months. It must be hard at times going through this trauma that you went through. How do you process this?
I know, because there's what happened, and there's the memory of it, and there's the loss. And then there's the loss of the future, of the things we had talked about doing, the plans we had, the joy we had just in everyday moments and taking walks and going for bike rides and hiking in the mountains. I'm and just kind of feeling like, well, how am I ever going to do that again? So it's not just, it's the traumatic loss and the grief and, the shoulda, woulda, coulda. I wish that hadn't happened. We didn't, it's nothing that we would ever have invited ever, of course. But it's the reality of it. So that reality is just, hitting hard, and it's not going away.
Yeah. Well, can you talk about what trauma stole from you?
Absolutely. It stole initially a sense of peace. It stole my sleep. It stole my appetite. I think I lost 20 or 30 pounds, that part's actually okay, but not really. But it stole just my sense of safety and, security. It basically stole the life I was living. It stole the life I was living completely. Gone. And so just not just starting over, but starting over in a negative zone where you have no idea how God's going to see you through this. Because you don't know what the future's going to be, because you've never been there before without your spouse, without your man who takes care of everything.
So when he passed, did you go through questioning God?
I didn't, but I could see how many would and could. I didn't, because I have a deep, a very, not fear of God, but maybe, fear in the right way. Like, I've read the book of Job many times. Like you know, God's prophet. I'm like, who am I to say how long someone should live and how they should die? And who am I? You know, that's in God's department, what he allows, what he doesn't allow. And for some reason, this was allowed to happen. I totally trust God's providence. I don't like it. I'm traumatized by it, and but I will say he has shown himself faithful to guide me through every mountain that I've faced since his passing. So what I did do, Nancy, is I did decide, okay, I can't control this. I didn't make this happen. I don't want this. It is reality. So I'm going to take on whatever comes my way. I'm going to take it on full on. I'm going to face whatever comes my way, and I'm going to deal with it. And I'm going to call on God to help me if I don't know how to do it. And that has been my position. But I could definitely see how someone would question, you know, God in a moment like this. I actually
Mhm.
didn't really have time to question God, truth be told. But I still am not. I'm just totally, now I'm in a total peace and understanding that it's God's providence, and I can't change it.
Yeah. Well, God must feel so near. You know, I happen to know people that, have lost their, sons tragically,
Yeah.
either by suicide, sadly, or by by just tragic sudden death, like your husband, a
Yeah.
car accident. And they lost their hope in God. They like, God, why?
Mm.
Why, God? So how can that fear continue to linger on?
Yeah, that it certainly can, but I think, you know, part of that goes into our relationship with God in the first place. Who do we understand God to be? Who is He in our lives? Is He a jackpot God that just that only does answers your prayer when you want something, or is he somebody that you actually have a relationship with and you've actually taken the time to get to know him and to know how he works, which requires not just reading scripture but being in Bible studies and being with other women who have lived life, and those stories that they're able to tell as they're sort of mentoring through sharing. And I'm a total fan of women's Bible studies because of that reason. We learn so much from each other that sometimes we don't understand that we are going to need that knowledge, but 10 years down the road, you end up going, oh, that's what she meant by, how she got through that. Um, but I have found God to be so faithful to me. And I do believe it's because of prayer and the prayers of all my friends, and many people who knew Greg around the country have been praying, and I have truly seen God's hand at work on our behalf, and it has been a deep comfort to me. So I have that deep peace and deep comfort. First, I think because of my relationship with God and having taken the time to know Him before a crisis happened like this, and as well as having all the relationships that my husband had built and that I'm blessed by today. So I have the people in my life. They're not taking care of me, but they're there if I need something.
Like the support group, right? Like a big
Yes,
support
yes. I,
system that
I
you
know I
have.
can call anyone, and I know that I can talk to any of my friends and his friends as well. It's safe. I feel safe. But that's
Yeah.
years of investing in relationships and friendships and study and scripture and having that knowing already. Um, but I've been through times in my life before I had done all of that studying, and it was very stressful not knowing, because we do destroy ourselves for a lack of knowledge because we don't have the right understanding, the right way to think about it. So I'm
Yeah.
super grateful that with this situation, all those years of investment have benefited my brain and my body and my relationships with others.
Yeah. Is there phases of trauma that you know about?
It goes very much aligned with the stages of grief, where you can't believe it. It's so unreal. And then you start bargaining, like, seriously, did this really just happen? And you expect him to walk around, walk in the room any minute. And I would say the grief and the loss of uh, denial that my life is going to be totally radically different, but it is. Um, Sort of bargaining that, oh, I can still do some of these things, right? Well, not for a while, not for a while. And just coming to terms with that and letting go of this is what we would have been doing right now. This is how our Christmas and Thanksgiving would have gone right now. This is how we would have gotten ready for the new year. And those things are not happening in the same way. I'm trying to do some of it, but just letting go of all the expectations. And so, and yes, there was a moment I was really angry. I was really mad. Like, are you kidding me? How could, how could, how could you do this to me? So, just, yeah, I did go through an anger phase, and that was interesting and kind of weird. But I'm glad I went through that, because that is one of the stages of grief where you get angry and then you come to acceptance. I think I've come to acceptance. It's still hard, but I've come to acceptance.
There are people, not just ones that lose their spouses or a family member or somebody very close to them, and that traumatized them. But there are people that come in, and we were talking about this a little bit before we got on, people that are like going through something, they're experiencing trauma, and then their trauma is coming on you, and there's a whole dynamic there. What do you do about that?
My husband wrote and actually treated thousands of folks over the years with trauma. And so what's so helpful is that when he writes from his experience, but also matches it with all the research studies that's been done on trauma. And one of the things with trauma is the best gift you can give to a trauma survivor is to listen, to sit with them, to listen to their story, because that's part of their healing process, to not ignore it. If they can talk about it, name it, that's such a gift to give a trauma survivor, if you're able to do that, just to sit with them and ask open-ended questions. Try to avoid the yes no answer questions, but open-ended, like, tell me more about that. How, how has that changed your life, and is there anything I can do to help you? Those are the three questions that he really would encourage folks to open the door with. But he also would talk about, don't take on their trauma, because you don't want to add to their problem. Like, that doesn't help them, and there's no fixing it. It's not for us to fix it. You cannot fix it. Like, you cannot fix what has happened to me and what I have to do to walk this out. That's what I have to do. But boy, when I know you're praying for me and you're loving on me, that's so encouraging. Like, I need that too, because that gives me hope that, okay, it's worth coming through this. I'm going to be stronger somehow. I can't see it now, but somehow I'm going to get through it, and it's going to be okay. And so your friendship is able to keep me encouraged along the way on my journey. But if you jumped on with me and started adding, over emphasizing and trying to take care of me, then that would probably not be very helpful. Help not asked for isn't helped. Hard to remember that as a mom.
It's so hard, more because, as a mother or a grandmother, you totally want to fix everything, right?
Yeah.
As a person, but that's another whole program.
That is.
Okay,
That
fixing
is.
people, but
Yeah.
because literally, and I didn't even know this until probably a year ago, that you cannot solve everybody's problem. You
No.
can't do it, and you're not supposed to.
No.
But I didn't even know that because I was so busy solving my kids' problems. I thought I had to solve other people's problems too. And then if you're taking it on, holy cow,
Yeah.
you're in the whole different place.
You are.
So, yeah, I mean, I give you counselors a lot of credit because counseling is so hard, yet so fulfilling because you are really helping somebody work through something that has traumatized them beyond words, right? So, yeah,
Absolutely. In our team, we have a staff of 50 on our treatment team, and they sit with hundreds of hours of just allowing this toxic download. Because where else are you going to take your 6 sickness too, and trauma. And so some of it is just so severe and so horrendous that it's really best done with a professional who knows how to help you walk through that. Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's what we
Yeah.
do. And you're right, we really provide a lot of support to our team to make sure they stay healthy, because that post-secondary, post-trauma is real, very real, so important.
Yes. And yes, so there might be somebody out there that thinking, hey, I'd love to be a counselor. But you know what? I mean, it's rewarding
It
and
is.
you have to buckle up.
Yes.
Tell you that because you don't know what could come out of someone. You don't know where they've been
Don't know.
traumatized.
And the different methods of coping that they've developed, as a result
Yeah,
of trying to cope with that trauma. Sometimes that makes them very difficult to work with and difficult to be in relationship with, you know.
exactly. Okay, so here's a focus for the people out there that might be listening. Does forgiveness feel impossible at first when you're trying to go through that trauma, or have you been through that trauma?
Yes, I would say in other instances before I had learned how to forgive, because forgiveness does not come natural. It's a decision, a choice that you then learn how to walk out. And that's confusing because most people think it's just I forgave them. I forgave them. So I don't have to talk to them ever again and I don't have to see them. I forgave them. But the truth is that's not real forgiveness. Real forgiveness is truly in your heart of hearts, you have released them from the offense. And you've truly, in your heart of hearts, in situations, released yourself from things that you need to forgive yourself for. You can't just pass over it because your mind and your body and your emotions will not let you get away with that long term. It's going to show up. And so the forgiveness piece I have practiced in my life. And, yeah, I had to forgive my husband for, any contribution he might have made towards having an accident that was that tragic, like, okay, I'm just going to have to forgive you and forgive myself for not, telling him, no, you can't do that. But, I mean, a guy's going to do what a guy's going to do. And he wasn't being reckless at all. It was just a very freak situation that none of us could have really done anything about. But you do go in your mind, about that.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, and then forgiving myself for, any negative thought I might have ever had towards him in my entire marriage. I'm like, all of a sudden, I could have been so much more loving and kind and, and all of that. And I wish I would have done this and that and said this and that. And so now I have to forgive myself for being, a wife of 43, 42 years. We were together 43, dating and then married. Um, so all of that you definitely kind of rehearse and relive, and the forgiveness piece, if you have practiced forgiveness, that piece, you will be so surprised, because if you have learned how to do that, you will see that you can do that through your entire life. And that's how you keep a clean account, they say. No, you don't have any resentment, no bitterness, you're not holding anybody against anything against anyone else, and you're not constantly beating yourself up. So it's worth it to learn how to forgive. It just speeds everything up in your life and makes you much happier each day. So
Hmm.
because of that, I think I was able to, process through that forgiveness piece. But when I was learning it, my husband would say, honey, it might take 2 years. You can't rush it. It's called walking it out. You are walking out forgiveness because it's a commitment you made to forgive that person. And every time that issue comes up again, you are forgiving. You are practicing releasing it. You are delivering God's justice to that situation, to that person. And he forgave me for everything I've ever done or thought or said, which is, a bucket load, maybe a truckload. Anyway, so, truly it is God's justice. He forgave me. I must forgive them. No matter what it is, it's going to set me free by making that decision to offer forgiveness.
Such a big part of trauma, of a person's trauma. But it can't be a surface forgiveness. It has to be a whole heart forgiveness. How does the healing through that trauma that you went through, what does it look like now?
I still might have a moment where I have a flashback on the day and the situation. I mean, it was a perfect day, and this situation happened at the end of the day. And so this was the most amazing, wonderful day, the 4th of July, even. And just, so there every once in a while is a flashback, and I'm like, oh, I wish that hadn't happened. And yet I just release it to God's care. I'm just like, that was his rapture moment. So I've reframed it as his rapture moment, because it was so instant, and he did
Instant.
not suffer, thankfully. Um, and so that's how I'm, really coping with it now in terms of just recovery. And I've brought the kids in for grief counseling. My mom died when I was 11. That was traumatic for me. She died from the flu. So in 3 days, she was just gone all of a sudden. And my father was not a fan of counseling. He was very, just didn't believe in it. That was, a long time ago, many years ago. And so never got help as a kid. And that sort of shaped me, and I'm sure that's why I was attracted to Greg in college, and why we were both so passionate about having a counseling center that would help people through their trauma and through their pain and through their depression and anxiety that would result in confusion, and lack of intimacy in relationships as a result of the trauma unresolved. And it just stays with you until you deal with it. And so I just didn't have the skills or tools to deal with it as a child, as a teenager. And here was this wonderful, happy, wonderful man studying psychology, and he had some good answers. And of course, he didn't have all the answers, but together as a married couple, we founded the center and a place of hope. And that's where we grew together in our own recovery path while we were helping others. And it does, we're the wounded, warriors that are helping others in the journey. And that's really what we were able to do together for 42 years. But yeah, so that's what that looks like now, is that I'm picking it up. It's in my hands. I have 2 wonderful adult sons and a daughter-in-law who are involved in the business, in the practice with us. And so that recovery, that journey looks like, that's part of the healing, is that we are bonded together. We made a commitment in the beginning to work together tightly, not to let anything be hidden from each other, to talk about all of our decisions together, so that we would be in this journey together and not isolate ourselves, or get to a place where we're not there for each other as a family. So that has been awesome and healing for us as well. Because families are complicated. A tragic moment only magnifies any issues that were there before. And don't we all know there are issues in every family? So we've experienced that too. And having our own clinical assistance to navigate through that has been very helpful and eye-opening, and a little surprising too, I would say, but very helpful.
Well, I love what you're talking about today, because I know there's some people out there that really need to hear this.
Yeah,
They really, there's so much unresolved trauma going on in
there
people's
is.
lives. And there's probably some in me too that I'm not even aware of, but to read some of the books, and the book that Gregory put out was Triumph Over Trauma, Finding Healing and Wholeness from Past Pain. So, this is a book that maybe if somebody is really suffering and doesn't know really what to do or how to pinpoint it, this might be a good stepping stone into trying to resolve your specific trauma. And so, where can they find out more about, the counseling, the books, and the website?
We have a website that is more than, it's just a resource site, and it's at aplaceofhope.com. You have to have the A in there, aplaceofhope.com. There, at the bottom is a store where you can look at the books that he's written. The trauma book is profound. He really talks about that we all, almost all, to be human is to experience some form of trauma at some point, some worse than others. And truly, truly, his books are written in such a way that a lot of Christian counselors actually use his books with their client in their clinical practices to help their clients recover. And so this book also has a workbook that a lot of counselors are using in their clinical practices. But you can have access to it. Amazon, of course, sells all of his books, and you can look up at Amazon Gregory Jantz or Greg Jantz. Either way, there's different books that show up. And then, of course, on our website, on the store, there's also a newsletter you can subscribe to. We send out weekly mental health tips that are very helpful, and that's free. And then also there are tests you can take to see, how severe is the trauma that you've experienced, how severely is that affecting your life and your relationships. And so those tests are also free on the website. So
What would you like to leave my audience with today?
always hope. There is hope. I know hope deferred makes the heart sick, and you might have been struggling with this, not knowing what to do, not even knowing what questions to even ask to try to feel better. And there are a lot of people who are just plain stuck. And so, really, you don't want to be like the Dead Sea. It's dead because there's no new incoming fresh water and there's nothing going out. So you don't want to, the main thing is don't be alone. Don't isolate yourself. Reach out, get more information. Get this book as a place to start. It will guide you in terms of even how to unisolate your life, because risking relationships, for some of the trauma and some of the hurts in relationship, you don't even want to talk to another person if you can get away with it. So risking relationship again is scary. And that's something my husband understood very, very deeply, and that we understand as well in the clinical field that we're in. So I just want to say, let some light in, let a little fresh, a little stream of a little bit of freshness come in, so that you don't sit there thinking there's nothing you can do, because there's definitely hope where there's a plan. So we want to get a plan in your hands so that you can walk this out and not be alone.
I hope you were blessed by this conversation and reminded you that God is still working in your life. Be sure to come back next time for more faith-filled conversations here on the call. See you next time.